Sarah Jane Vegas from Stand for Justice Movement, and I'm here today with Shontell Brewer. And she's a writer, speaker, and teacher, and she does a lot of things. Mom of 5 kids and married to a firefighter. So if you want to learn more about her, please watch the first video that we did. So it's part 2 right now. And now we want to talk about... it's so many people are like, when is the best time to talk about to my kids about human trafficking? Or they say, well, I don't want my children to know. And you wrote something about it that was very inspiring, and I think every parent wants to hear it. So can you share about it?
Sure. So I actually get asked this question a lot because I teach in public school, and then because I minister to a lot of moms and I work with a lot of parents, and they'll say that's very scary, and I don't want my kids I don't want them to be panicky, and I usually say, there's so much work that we can do ahead of time so that our kids aren't freaked out when things like this come up. That it doesn't have to be their normal, that they just accept it, but they can be ready for a conversation rather than us always having to do retroactive work. We can be proactive as parents.
Yes.
And I say that there are levels that you can talk to your kids all the way from when they're preschool age. We... as parents, when our kids were really small, my husband and I, when we would drop our kids off at preschool, or even when we finished homeschooling and we sent our kids to school, wherever we would drop them off, we would walk in with some sort of intentional plan. So whether it was, we'd throw out a challenge, so a 4-year-old, we would say, look your teacher in the face and say, you look really pretty today. Just something really small. Tell them, or, if somebody drops something, go be the first person over there to go help them pick it up. If you see someone sitting by themselves, invite them to play, or say, is it okay if I sit with you and join them? That right there is advocacy, and we don't even, it doesn't have to be your 4-year-old going around talking about anti-trafficking. It can be them being aware of other people, which is a huge first step. And as they get older and older, if they're more aware of the people that are around them and they're listening to conversations, when their friends are saying, hey, I was cutting, or hey, I'm really struggling, or I'm depressed, or if they even mention something about suicide, my kids for all this time we've been having the conversation about being kind and being aware of other people and intentional in relationships with other people, that this isn't the first time that they're not faced with some other person's problem. They've been working on this now for 10, 15 years. They're used to saying, I hear you, I see you, I understand what you're saying, which is a great first start to trafficking. In addition to that, because we know that the average entry is between 12 and 14 years old, which is just, that's a lot. That is, as a mama, that is a lot to hear and accept, and know.
It's getting younger and younger, I guess. It's been 12 to 14 for a while, but I feel like the perversion of it is like making men want younger and younger.
Right. And we know that statistically that is just true with what we find with the data that we receive. And if I am able to talk to my son specifically, to my boys, and say, what would you do if somebody came up and showed you an inappropriate picture? That might be kind of an uncomfortable conversation for a few minutes, but what would be way worse is if I never had that conversation with him. I want to be willing to be the mom that says those crazy hard questions ahead of time. We had that incident. My son and I were in the car, and he was probably about 10 or so, and he was getting ready to go in, well, maybe a little older. He's getting ready to go into middle school. And so I said, have you ever had anyone ever show you an inappropriate picture? And he was like, what? Just totally freaking out. Why would you even ask me that? And because I want to know. And so he said, well, yeah, actually someone's tried. And so I said, okay, what did you do? And he said, well, I said I didn't want to look at that. And so I said, that's good. What else could you have done? And he was like, I don't know. I thought I did the right thing. And so I assured him that he did do the right thing, but he also could have gone and said, you don't have to look at that stuff either. If that, and however it is coming out of an 11-year-old boy's mouth, it would be different. But to know that he's a safe enough friend for that kid to come over here and that doesn't have to be what makes you cool or what makes you acceptable. You can come over here and not look at those things and not be part of that, because we know that a lot of that, that pornography is going to lead to addictions, or, who even knows what. And just really changing the climate, the culture in my own family to say, it isn't enough to just not be a part of that. You also have a responsibility to stick up for the kids that are around you and to speak up and make a difference to the people that are around you.
That's so good.
And it really empowers them. And he was so young, you know, and I wasn't talking to him about the details of trafficking or any of that. But now as a high schooler, he's a senior now, as he has gone about his senior year, in even all through high school, he will say, hey, I noticed this kid is getting bullied.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about it. But because we've had that open conversation, that was the norm that we set, it wasn't weird for him to come and have that conversation with me. And we actually were able to, together, contact the principal and get that boy help. And he was really severely being bullied.
Wow.
So by a group of girls,
Wow.
in high school. So, but they liked him, you know, so it was weird and it was not a normal situation, but because we had set up that norm in our household, then it wasn't hard for him to come to me. And he said, after we had that conversation, a few minutes passed, and he said, why did you ask me that question? And I said, because I don't want you thinking about your answer when you're in the middle of temptation. When you're faced with temptation or a difficult situation, I want you to come into that situation knowing how you stand, knowing what you believe, knowing who you are, which I think is also a really great tactic for helping kids either to fall into a grooming situation and also not to become the purveyors, the people who are causing problems as well.
Wow, that's so good. I love because when you share these stories, like, it made me think like your child was empowered to know how to respond, you know, for the bullying situation. Like looking at his friend being bullied, it was not just afraid and scared and stay quiet, but it's like, oh, I have the power to bring a solution, and he knew who to go to bring a solution against it, and it's like it makes him like in a place of empowerment and not like being a victim of it. I love that. It just, when we talk about it, it made me think of, there was one time I was speaking at a church in Las Vegas, and I was sharing about, we had just gotten back from the porn convention. And so I was sharing about how many of these women that are working in pornography are trafficked victims. And I was explaining that every time people are like, it's not harmful, you know, when I just watch it, you know, it's just for my own pleasure. I'm not buying anyone. And what they don't understand is that most of these women, like, when they're watching it, they're making the demand for the movies to be done more and more. The supply comes because they don't ask for it. And so they are helping men, like, come and exploit women for their own profit, for their own need, you know. And so people don't have this idea. They don't think that every time you click on a picture or on a video, you're helping a trafficker come and like beat up a girl. Or if they're doing it because they know you're going to buy, you know, you're going to watch. So I was sharing about that. And a mom heard me talk about it and not thinking she was going to talk about it with her son, because I think he was like super young and maybe 10 years old. No reason for her to talk about it, you know, with her son. But then her son was playing on the computer and accidentally he was searching something on Google and pornography came up. Okay. And she saw her son freaked out, closed the computer and like super scared, not knowing what to do, like really scared. And she was able to sit down with him and share, you know, no details, of course, you know, but be able to say, you know, there's some, you know, people that do wrong things and they're hurting women or making women do things that they don't want to do. And directly he looked at her and said, Mom, can we pray for them? And I'm like, I get emotional because I'm like, this kid was able to see that pornography for what it was from the beginning. And children, they learn the truth for the first thing they heard. And if you're not the first one teaching them what is true, you know, they're gonna just believe what their friends at school are gonna tell them, or what the society is gonna tell them. And we just live in a world now when the iPhones and like all these like pornographic images, or even if it's not just porn, like all the things that we see, the objectization of women that is happening in media, like movies. They're exposed to it and they learn younger and younger, like those things that are not good, you know. And just like I see for me when I was teaching one time young people, I was amazed that I'm a survivor of human trafficking. Okay, I've been working against it for 7 years, so at that time might have been 5 years. some expert in a way, you know,
Yeah.
on the issue. They were teaching me things. Okay, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and some parents are like, oh, I don't want to talk about it with them. And I'm like, they might know more than you do.
Right.
And being able to teach them healthy sexuality, healthy respect of men and women
Right.
is so important. You know, you don't have to start with trafficking. You can start with learning how to respect your body,
Right.
knowing your value, your beauty, you know,
Right.
and the beauty and value of others, and saying, hey, like, I'm going to be careful and take care of the emotions and needs of people. Like, men need to know how to teach their sons that, you know, women have like emotions, you know,
Right.
and the same way, you know, in opposite. So I think it's so important that children learn it like so much younger than we think about. They learn about sex when even we don't even think they would have learned it.
Right.
Because now this is everywhere. I mean,
Right.
sex sells in a society, particularly in the United States, and they will find out about it. So I think it's so important to start in a very young age with small things. Like I
Right.
say, you don't have to start with like
Right,
trafficking,
right.
but showing them what is healthy, what healthy relationships look like, and then just keep building them into it so they can look at human trafficking later on when they're older and say, hey, I'm empowered to make a difference against it. I'm not
Right.
going to be afraid of it.
Well, and if you even think about, so this boy that was being bullied, that my son saw this situation, and he said, hey, is everything okay? So he felt strong enough in himself to go and talk to this kid.
So good.
And then the boy kept coming back and saying, and he was opening up more and more to my son and saying, this is what's happening and this is what's happened today. And so he asked the kid, how do you want to handle it? And he's like, I don't want to say anything. And I said, I'm sorry, that's just not okay with me. And so you can either bring him here to me and we can have a conversation, or we're going to deal with this in some way. And so we dealt with it anonymously. We told him we were going to tell, and he said, okay, go ahead. And, you know, he was scared of retribution from these girls and these families. And, you know, and it's embarrassing because he's feeling like, okay, I'm a boy. And so this is happening. But, you know, forever, that kid's going to know how much my son loved him. That he loved him enough to say, I'm not going to let this keep happening. Even if you think you're okay with it, I'm going to be your person. I'm going to speak up for you. And then forever, I'm going to be proud of my son for caring so much at such a young age for somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a ton of little things that we can do. I call that parenting small. And as mamas, we have this opportunity. I love that you said that kids believe the first thing, you know, the truth is the first thing that they hear. And if we know that to be true, then we have such an opportunity as mothers to not just teach our kids that God exists, but to teach them that God knows them personally, that they are made in his image personally, and that they have a calling. So what is it? You know, I mean, whatever family you've been put in, whatever situation you've been dealt, what are you doing with it? You know, some of them are great stories. Some people don't have the hard stories, the super hard stories, but everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And God wants to use all of it.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love it. It's amazing. Yeah. So thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Yeah.
And do you have anything else you want to share?
No, that was it.
I think it was so good.
Yeah, that was a lot.
I'm sure we're gonna do more videos later on with you because you know you're like amazing. You have so many great things.
you.
Like even every time we stop the camera and we keep talking, I'm like, oh no, we should. I filmed that. But yeah. So thank you for coming and thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions that you want to ask us or anything that really touched your heart or resonate with you, please comment below. And we love you guys.